In lesson 7, we're going to be talking about unit rate and constant proportionality again, but we're talking about them as being the same thing. So really, we're just changing how we talk about things we've already talked about and learned so far this year. So we have our national forest deer population. And it says wildlife conservatives are concerned that the deer population might not be constant across the national forest. They found that there were 144 deer in a 16 square mile. Another part of the forest, they had 117 deer in a 13 square mile area. And then in another one, they counted 216 in a 24 square mile plot. So the question part A asks, what is the population density of deer per square mile? And since we're not sure if they're constant, that's what we need to find right now. So I'm going to set up a table, and I'm going to call this square miles. And of course, it'll be a little sloppy here. And this is going to be number of deer. And then we'll have our unit rate. And what we're talking about here, what makes most sense, is if we have the number of deer per square mile. It doesn't make sense to have square miles per deer. So we're going to have deer per square mile. Now that's why deer per square mile, remember we find our unit rate is just like our constant of proportionality, y divided by x. So deer are going to be our y, and square miles is going to be our x. And we're just going to take our information from the table up top here, the paragraph up top. There were 144 deer in 16 square feet. 144 deer, 16 square feet. So, square miles. The number of square miles is 16, and we have 144 deer. Then, in another part, they had 117 deer in 13 miles. So, 13 square miles. So, in 13 square miles, we have 117 deer. And what I'm doing right here, you guys, is I take our 216, 24 square miles. It's a really good idea sometimes to set up a table like this because it helps organize the information. Because when I see it like this, I see it as, the number of deer per square mile. I know I can go y divided by x because that is how we find our constant. And that's how we find our constant. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to divide all of these. 144 divided by 16. And if you take a calculator and do that, that works out to be 9. 9 what? 9 deer per square mile. Then I'm going to take 117 and divide it by 13. And if you were to get out a calculator, that would work out to be 9 deer per square mile. Now remember, it has to work for all of them. So I'm going to take 216 and divide it by 24. And if you want to double check me on a calculator, I also get 9 deer per square mile. So what does that tell us? Remember, wildlife conservatives were concerned that they might not be constant, but it looks to me like we have a constant. So the unit rate of deer per 1 square mile is 9. I'm going to squeeze that in there. The constant of proportionality, well, guess what? Our constant is 9. Explain the meaning of the constant proportionality? Well, there are 9 deer per square mile. So we've done all of this before. We've done this, and now we're just going to be thinking about it a little differently. We want to think of it in terms of finding our unit rate, how that we can use that then to figure other things out. That being said, look at part B here. Use the unit rate of deer per square mile to determine how many deer there are for every 207 square miles. Okay, so we know there are 9 deer per square mile. And we now have 207 square miles. So if there's 9 deer per 1, we can times that by the number of square miles. And if you just multiply them together, you get 1,863 deer in 207 square miles. Now it says use the unit rate again to determine the number of square miles. This time we're looking for square miles where we're going to find 486 deer. Well, remember there's 9 deer per square mile. And now we have 486 deer. So if we take the number of deer and divide it by how many there are per square mile, divided by 9. So there's 486 total deer divided by 9. That'll give us the number of square miles, and that works out to be 54 square miles. A lot of this, we want to make sure our answer makes sense. Because look at, we just multiplied right here, and we divided right here. And we'll talk about why we do those things as we go forward. But if there's 9 deer per square mile, and we have 207 square miles, well, then we anticipate that we should have a pretty big number. If we have 9 deer per square mile and 486 deer, well, I anticipate that there's going to be less deer or less square miles than the number of deer. So again, you just always want to make sure that your answer makes sense.